So, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Student Homelessness and What Connecticut's Northwest Corner Can Do About It webinar. My name is Rod Montz. I am the Director of State Policy at SchoolHouse Connection. I'm joined here by my colleague, Karen Rice, and Michelle Anderson, who will introduce herself shortly, who is part of our State Policy Fellows program. SchoolHouse Connection is a national nonprofit that works to overcome homelessness through education. We participate in strategic advocacy. We provide practical assistance, and we work in partnership with early childhood programs, colleges and universities, service providers, families, and youth, including many who've been impacted by homelessness. I am the Director of State Policy, which means I get to work with all those wonderful folks in different states around the country, including Connecticut, and that brings me here today. You can find out more about our work at schoolhouseconnection.org, including a lot of information on our federal and state policy advocacy work and a wealth of resources for service providers. Our Policy Fellows initiative aims to connect and mobilize a network of allies and advocates from a variety of states around the country who respond to legislative advocacy at both the federal and state levels. One of those fellows is the wonderful Michelle Anderson, who's joining us today, and I'll let Michelle introduce herself.
Hi, thank you, Rod. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope some of my Connecticut colleagues are on the call. I can't see who all is on the call, but I'm hoping some of my friends in the Northwest Corner joins. It has been an honor to be part of the Schoolhouse Policy Fellows Group this past year. Homeless education and the McKinney-Vento Act are very passionate. I'm very passionate about working to improve the lives of kids and using education as the strategy for children experiencing homelessness. I am the Director of Early Childhood and Family Programs at EdAdvance, and one of the projects that fits under that department is the McKinney-Vento subgrant, which I work closely with Torrington Public Schools in Torrington, Connecticut, and I help kind of bring the McKinney-Vento law to life. We have a transient population and in and out population of homeless students. So they really needed someone to lay better eyes on it, take more focus to it. And I've been doing that now for 6 to 10 years, and our agency has as well. And I really enjoy the work. It does make a difference. So that is one hat that I wear, but this is a special hat that I wear. So being a part of this advocacy group has been fabulous because I'm meeting colleagues from across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. So this is going to be a relatively brief webinar. We're going to go over some issues regarding student homelessness, provide a congressional legislative overview, and then talk about some things that you can do if you're interested in helping. So there are about 1.1 million students experiencing homelessness in public schools across our country. And I can tell you that figure is down from about 1.4 million just a few years ago. So that loss of 300,000 students is a reflection of the challenges that schools have in identifying and communicating with students experiencing homelessness that has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And student homelessness has many faces. I know Michelle can speak to what that looks like in Connecticut, and that's really a reflection of what we see in so many different states across the country.
Yeah, so in our northwest corner of Connecticut, we do see all these faces of homelessness within our student population. I think too, being involved in the homeless, adult homeless population, service provider population, you see that these definitions look a little different. So the two definitions, the school one and the adult world, sometimes don't always match, but in our community, Northwest Corner, Torrington, we do have students in motels. We do have them staying with other people following an eviction. We have shelter, families living in shelters, domestic violence shelter, and an emergency shelter. We have 2 in our area, plus our local, our city that's close to us, Waterbury, has another. additional 2 more. And we also have couch surfing youth. And this is our largest population of student homelessness. It would be your doubled up families, and, folks that are doubling up pretty much out of not their choice, because they're trying to figure out where their next move will be. And just over the years, to give some data on our area in Connecticut, and if some of my colleagues are on in Connecticut and other cities, they're going to have higher numbers probably, but we are small in the northwest corner. So for this school year in 2019-2020, we had about 62 students reported in Torrington schools as homeless. Then it dipped, as Rod mentioned, during COVID to about 24 students because they did fall off the radar. And then we are up now again to about, we're about 35 now. In 2018, 2019, to back up more, we had about 81. So our numbers go up and down, and it really does matter on what's going on at the time in our community. So COVID definitely, our numbers declined to 24 actually. And now we're slowly regaining back. We're laying eyes on students. We are connecting more with families. So this year we're ending up with about 35 to 40 students that are McKinney-Vento. But most of our students are in this doubled up category.
Thank you, Michelle. And if you all have questions, please feel free to drop them and to use the Q&A feature to drop them in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go through some data. It won't be data heavy, this presentation, but just to give you an idea of what some of the numbers look like, I wanted to go over a few data points. So homelessness, no surprise, impacts education. 42% of students who experience homelessness say they have dropped out of school at least once, and 60% say it's hard to stay in school while homeless, for obvious reasons. Homelessness is associated with an 87% likelihood of dropping out of school, being chronically absent, or facing disproportionate school discipline. And over time, these things contribute to achievement gaps that persist and usually grow as students advance. We at Schoolhouse believe that education is really important to overcoming homelessness. In fact, the lack of a high school diploma or GED is the single greatest determinant of homelessness as a young adult or adult. It makes people 346% more likely to face homelessness, in fact. One of the reasons that happens is because more than 2/3 of jobs require some form of post-secondary education. So one of the strategies designed to help overcome that is the McKinney-Vento Act, which is federal legislation that has become even more important during the pandemic. The McKinney-Vento Act removes barriers to education for youth experiencing homelessness by keeping students in their school of origin, providing students with transportation, providing immediate enrollment, and assisting students to graduation and beyond. Who's eligible for McKinney-Vento services? The children and youth who are experiencing homelessness, including those who don't typically fit the definition most folks have of homelessness, including those folks Michelle referenced before, who are sharing housing with others, or who are living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, or camping grounds. Those who are living in emergency or transitional shelters, who are living in places not regularly used as housing, or who are living in their cars, abandoned buildings, or bus stations, or other places not fit for habitation. Now, pause for a moment to see if we do have questions.
Just to add, Rod, my data was very Torrington specific because I have to report that data because I have a subgrant with that community. However, throughout the school year, I get calls from all of our surrounding towns in the northwest corner, and I would say probably work on about 10 to 12 homeless cases in those smaller towns throughout the school year. Because Ed Advance serves the whole region, the Northwest region. So I am a contact to those schools as well. Those McKinney-Vento liaisons at those schools reach out and brainstorm with me. We figure things out. We troubleshoot together. So Ed Advance sees itself as a resource to those other school districts.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. So our policy fellows this year have been involved in legislative advocacy at the federal level. You see here, that's really important now because our Congress is so evenly divided. The narrow majority in the House and Senate means that bipartisan efforts at legislative reform are really important, and that's been the focus of our legislative engagement. We have 3 areas that we've been advocating around. Our top 3 priorities include advocating for flexible funding to support homeless children and youth, removing barriers to higher education for homeless and foster youth, and getting support for the Homeless Children and Youth Act. So when it comes to flexible funding, we've been advocating for $800 million to be the annual appropriation for the Education for Homeless Children and Youth Act moving forward, which is a substantial increase in what has traditionally been provided for the program. The $800 million investment passed last year came as a result of persistent advocacy in conjunction with folks like Michelle and others who work in the field, as well as those who've been impacted. In fact, it's 8 times the annual appropriation, and it's more funding than the previous 10 years for the program combined. So we are advocating for it to be continued, given the rise in homelessness and the difficulty folks have had in identifying those children and youth and providing them the support that they need.
And Rod, if I could just quickly interject on that flexible funding, it has been so impactful in our Northwest corner because we have been able to really do things that we could never do before. Get a little more creative about transporting students that are experiencing homelessness. We have also been able to use some funds to keep families stabilized in hotels until their Section 8 inspection pass. And that is something that if we did not have those funds and we were not able to do that, they would have been again homeless and had to re-enter the whole homeless system and lose their Section 8 voucher. So this funding has been so important, and the additional funds have been so important because we were not able to do that before.
Thank you, Michelle. Those are really important points to highlight. We are also advocating for what we refer to simply as HEASHFY, the Higher Education Access and Success for Homeless and Foster Youth Act, which is a mouthful. But this bipartisan bill removes barriers to higher education and helps students succeed by providing them the support that they need. They don't typically get the support at the higher education level that they do in K-12 education because of the McKinney-Vento liaisons. So we're trying to get liaisons funded and implemented at the higher education level. We want to make sure that through HEASHFY, there's a plan for housing both during the semesters and school breaks, and that students experiencing homelessness are prioritized for on-campus housing. That students experiencing homelessness or in the foster care system have access to in-state tuition and a lot of other things. You can read more about the HEASHFY provisions on our website. Now, the third priority, the Homeless Children and Youth Act, is aimed at correcting some of the long-standing flaws in eligibility requirements. There's a difference in how homelessness is defined by HUD and through other federal agencies. And as a result, it's difficult in many instances for students experiencing homelessness to access the supports that they need. So we are trying to make sure that the definitions are aligned so that as people are identified in federal programs, they're all able to get access to the support necessary to address their basic needs. In the process, we want to make sure that there's ample data collection and tracking. So our ask so far has been for U.S. reps and senators to support the funding for students, to co-sponsor HEASHFY, and to co-sponsor the Homeless Children and Youth Act. And that's been the work that our policy fellows have been involved in, including Michelle there in Connecticut. And as a result of some of that work, we've seen some progress with more reps signing on, but we still have quite a bit more work to do, and we need to get senators involved too. And Michelle may want to address some of her experience in that work.
Absolutely. So far I've met with Representative Hayes's office and her aides, and also Representative Murphy's office and his aides as well. And, they both are very understanding to this issue. They are probably going to sign on. Representative Hayes has already done that. Of course, she is a stranger to homeless education and McKinney-Vento Act, being a teacher in Waterbury, one of our neighboring cities here that has a very high number of homeless children. So she saw firsthand benefits of the McKinney-Vento Act. So she's actually a co-sponsor on House Bill 6278, which I'm trying to guess what title. I think it's number 2. Yeah, so she's already done that. We're trying to get the other congressional leadership in our communities to do so. So again, we can't, it's all in connection. So if you're here from Connecticut and you have a rep or a senator you're working with or have a contact, please reach out, and especially if this is work that you engage in, because it has made a difference. We are funded quite well right now. We need to keep that going.
Thank you. I will look for questions. No open questions yet. Okay. We are headed to the home stretch. So in addition to extending our appreciation for your participation today, we also recognize that there may be folks in attendance who are outside of Rep. Hayes's district. So we are asking you to check to see if your member is signed on as a co-sponsor of the bill. You can go to congress.gov and type in the bill numbers that you have seen before, or look up the names of those pieces of legislation, and that will allow you to access the information to identify the legislator. And we don't have any senators signed on to those bills yet either. So, and I'll give you those bills in just a moment when I stop sharing my screen. So there is opportunities for you all to do that. And then the other thing that you can do is reach out to folks in other districts, if you happen to be in Rep. Hayes's district, for instance, and ask them to contact their representative or senator to co-sponsor the legislation. The more sponsorship we have, the greater support we have for the legislation, the more likely that it'll move. And another way to engage with your elected officials is to follow them on social media. Legislators and their staff members tend to pay attention to how their constituents are engaging with them. So that would be another opportunity for you to connect with them and to make that ask. You can follow more about what we're doing, including our policy fellows work, through our newsletter, and you can find information about our federal work on our federal policy page, but also our state work on our state policy page, including the work that our fellows do.
And I plan to have a roundtable in the fall, hopefully, with our especially Representative Hayes, who has been a supporter of this, and then have some service providers speak to her about some of the issues and encourage this support, and encourage her to encourage her colleagues to support this.
And we also plan to find ways to engage with other elected officials across Connecticut to get their support. So in addition to asking you all to do that outreach, we are also here and available to assist. I've provided my contact information. I'll drop that in the chat again for anyone who may want to reach out to me. We're happy to facilitate those connections and participate in legislative visits as we did with Michelle. These are really great opportunities. And I can tell you, we have a large cohort of policy fellows who engage in legislative visits. Earlier this year, we saw quite a few legislators sign on to legislation after those visits occurred, which was really great to see. And I can tell you that the staff members that we met with were really happy to be able to engage with constituents. So this is a really great opportunity to do very meaningful work that will help youth and young adults experiencing homelessness. All right, I don't see questions. So with that said, I think we can wrap up. Did you have anything else you wanted to share, Michelle?
No, I don't think so. I continue to be on groups in our northwest corner of Connecticut where I will put this on the agenda. We have youth engagement teams that deal with youth homelessness. We have youth service bureau groups, social work networks. So we will continue. We did have Rep. Hayes attend one of our social work network meetings where this was a topic. So we'll continue our advocacy. We are very happy with our Connecticut State Department of Ed that they were able to access this funding and make it come to life for Connecticut programs. So we are just hoping it continues. Thank you.
All right. And Katie says, thank you, Michelle.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Everybody.
And I just wrapped those bill numbers in the chat for anyone who wants to grab that. It's there. Jill thanks you as well. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be posting this on our site and making it available via email for everyone who registered. So you'll have it and you will be able to share with others you think might be interested in learning more about youth homelessness issues in Connecticut and getting involved in helping to make a positive impact. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.